Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga, and if you missed the first segment, I just went over the controversial tush push and the issue that was brought up with it now in the offseason and teams talking about it, potentially trying to get rid of it, but it's not looking very likely. That was in the first segment. And if you're joining me now, that you're just in time for the second segment of the show. Just an update on the trade rumors and potential trade deadline change that could be coming as another rule change that has been brought up recently by the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, Andrew Berry. But before I get into that story, I just want to give you an update on mostly rumors that have been popping up more and more because, like I mentioned before, we are getting into March, or we are in March, actually. It's March 1st. This is where everything starts to pick up. This is where everything, you start to see teams kind of get their backs against the wall and they kind of feel that they got to do something now. So some of the rumors that I thought were pretty prevalent and important now are one of them being the Patriots, and they could end up trading one of their receivers now, arguably one of their better ones, their veteran wide receiver, Devontae Parker. He could become available with a trade, and this article was posted by The Athletic, and in the article it said, look for the Patriots to dangle Parker into some trade talks in the coming weeks, even if it's for a late round pick. And that, if they go that route, it kind of supports what I've been saying on the show religiously now at this point. Build up those draft picks, build up the draft capital that you have going, because this team, quite honestly, at the moment, the Patriots aren't really going anywhere just by drafting a world-class quarterback in spot number 3. They could end up doing that, and it works out really well for them. But, they need a lot more than just that to get them going. They have a lot of pending free agents that they might have to get rid of, one of them being Kyle Duggar, and what his situation looks like, and others among that. They're really ushering in a new era with Gerard Mayo and trying to get things really lined up, kind of projecting everything, what they need to get under control. And I think this is a pretty smart move. Yeah, you're losing a good playmaker, but Devontae Parker is in the later half of his career. And I think they could draft some more wide receivers in this draft. There's a lot of talented ones. And I think Kendrick Bourne is definitely the more talented one, younger one. I think he's the one you can't touch. But then other than that, I'm pretty sure they'd be willing to listen to offers for pretty much anyone on that offense just to increase the quality that they have on this team. That's one trade that could be happening. Another one that's been dominating the news media world has been the Falcons and their interest in Justin Fields. Nothing really much on this front, but one thing that has changed a little bit are the odds for Justin Fields to land with the Falcons. They moved up. They're even favored more now to land them. They're at minus 425. And really, they're the only team I've seen reports on that has reached out to the Bears, made it known that, hey, we're interested potentially, saying to the Bears that, oh, we're here. We're one of those teams that could potentially come with an offer to you soon. But nothing concrete has been made of that. That was reported by NBC Sports, that the Falcons are the only team that has reached out. And other than that, I haven't seen too much. That still continues to be one of the more popular stories heading into March and the official start of free agency. But nothing really too much on that point. Just that the Falcons are really the only team. Another one is the Eagles. And one update that I saw on the way here was that they released their safety, Kevin Byard. They freed up a lot of cap space by releasing him, but he's another one that departs. On top of this one that was reported a few weeks ago. This one might have been even reported closer to the end of the season, but it was Haasan Reddick and the Eagles granting him permission to seek a trade. And that was a pretty surprising one to me just because of the season that he had prior to last. Yeah, he didn't have the success this past season, but, at the moment I thought it seems pretty far-fetched that they'll actually trade him because he's was one of the more impactful players, had a great season. But in the other hand, now that I'm thinking about it now, they have other young guys like Nolan Smith is a big one that was asked about a lot at the Combine with Howie Roseman there. And Howie Roseman actually said that, it might not have been the smartest idea to draft Nolan Smith so high and not really play him as much. I think they'll want to carry that idea into next season, so maybe releasing or trading Haasan Reddick could be in the best interest for all of them. For the Eagles to get younger, try out Nolan Smith. He was drafted in the first round, so if Haasan Reddick's gone, he'll definitely get a lot more playing time. Potentially could become their number one option. If he starts playing now, they'll keep most likely Montez Sweat on the other side if Reddick goes. And it was reported by Josina Anderson for CBS that several teams are actually showing trade interest in Reddick. She also reports that he's sort of looking for a pay raise of some sorts by any team. And one team I saw today was that it could be the in-division rival of the Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, that could have some serious interest in Haasan Reddick to pair him up with Micah Parsons. And I find it very unlikely, almost impossible, that the Eagles will trade to the Dallas Cowboys. But, if Haasan Reddick will carry a big cap hit, so if they could trade him, I don't know exactly how big of a cap hit, but if it's pretty serious, maybe they'll listen to it. And if he goes there, that'll be great for him, not only because Michael Parsons will take a lot of pressure off of him, he might have a little bit more incentive, more motivation to play against his former team. He'll do better, and I'd be pretty interested to see that. Just an in-division trade, it would be very entertaining, those games, even more than they already are. But it's still very unlikely thinking about it objectively. So that's one team that I saw that was starting to build up a bit more steam. Another update has to just do quickly with the Jets. General Manager Joe Douglas granted Zach Wilson permission to seek a trade elsewhere. And a lot of reports, everyone seems to have the feeling that, this was to be expected. He's kind of run his course in New York. And with Aaron Rodgers being there, probably at least a year or maybe two more, Zach Wilson will be 26, 27 by then. And if he hasn't played, how much of a market will there be for an older quarterback now? Still in his prime, don't get me wrong, but hasn't had a lot of playing experience. How many teams are really going to want that guy that, still has to really prove himself? He's not going to do it in New York. And by the time he's 27, still really having to prove yourself, it's not very attractive for many teams. So Zach Wilson is still 24, the same age some rookies come into the league. But he's got that NFL experience. He does have the ups and the downs of being in the NFL. So is there a market out there for him to be a starter? I don't think so. To be a starter, not a lot to be a starter, really. The only ones I could think of could be the Raiders, maybe the Vikings. But it seems they're in a good place with Kirk Cousins right now in terms of extending him. So that one could be a bit far-fetched. I don't think they trade him to the Patriots. Again, another in-division trade seems unlikely. Even if the Patriots aren't talent-wise to the level maybe of the Jets, or they are close. They had some close games, but if Zach Wilson goes there and plays well, it could look very stupid for the Jets. So I don't think they'd risk that. The Rams has been thrown out there, which could be good because Matthew Stafford's on his last, hoorah there with the Los Angeles Rams, and they plan on being good. So how often are you going to be in a position to draft a younger, good quarterback? He could be one, but I think the Raiders makes the most sense to me. Maybe even the Broncos if they trade for him, because Russell Wilson's most likely gone, and you have a young team there still looking to find their footing. I think it could be a good growing point, especially under Sean Payton. That's experienced, tough on him, but I think it'll come good with it for him to have an experienced voice, an older voice, rather than younger coaches that are just getting into it, into head coaching role positions. I think a more experienced, aged voice would definitely help him out. But who knows how that'll go. He could become a backup somewhere. We'll just have to wait and see. And the biggest one still revolves around L'Jarius Sneed and the Chiefs, and potentially finding a hole where he could fit. The Falcons or actually just the Falcons, are the biggest team linked to him. And NFL insider Tony Pauline reported that he said that the overwhelming feeling in the Chiefs is to expect to be playing without Sneed in 2024. so this coming year. And rather than losing him in free agency and receiving a compensatory pick in 2025, they'll try and trade him and get a better pick this year in just a few months in April. And it makes sense. And the team that's been really rumored to him has been the Falcons. Nothing concrete as of yet, but it's intriguing because the Falcons just seem to be all over the news and interested in everybody. It seems like they're really eager, really active in free agency, trade talks, and everything to really want to push this team to be a competitor just in September when the season starts. So if it all happens, I just keep mentioning because the Falcons could be really good with a lot of good young talent under Raheem Morris and what they're doing over there. So that's exciting to think about. It'll just make the NFC a lot more competitive and exciting, but nothing's been said yet. The Chiefs are open to trade him if they can't work out a long-term deal, but it's still in a point where L'Jarius Sneed would love to stay, but he'll figure it out. And the later this goes, the later I think he'll be pushed out the door. At least that's what the feeling will be by a lot of people, I'm thinking. But the biggest thing I wanted to talk about mostly was the trade deadline pushback that could be coming. The general manager that has been the most active about it, the loudest voice in changing this, was the Browns general manager Andrew Berry. And along with other teams like the Commanders, Eagles, Jets, Lions, and 49ers, they are all kind of vying to push the trade deadline back. They're trying to get it to push back from week 8 all the way, just back to week 10, just 2 more weeks. And they're going to bring it up a lot more strongly at the NFL meeting, the 24th to the 27th. And he's kind of been the voice about it recently, just at the Combine where he's talked about it. And he said, just to support his point, our professional sport has the earliest trade deadline by far. He brought up some numbers and he said, baseball and basketball have their trade deadline after about 65% of their games. Hockey's even higher after 78% of their games. The NFL, arguably the biggest sport in the United States, has theirs after only 45% of their games, not even at the midway point. Pushing it back to week 10 could just increase that number to 55. It would still be the lowest one, but at least you get it at a good balance halfway through. And some of the points that he made to support this I thought were really good. He said on average over 27 teams have been within 2 games at the wild card spot after week 10. And he also said that the earliest team that's been eliminated from the playoffs over the last decade has been after week 11, and that's only happened twice. And, he said those in response to the comeback that, how does this prevent tanking? Because if it's just pushed back a lot more, if it's pushed back 2 weeks, I should say, and teams sitting at a 4-5 record, worse, maybe like a 3-7 record. What? How does that stop them from tanking and just trading everyone away for draft picks and creating these super teams essentially? And he gave those 2 reasons. He said that the data doesn't really support teams tanking because of what I just said. A lot of teams are still in playoff contention, and after the trade deadline, if it is pushed back only 2 weeks, it still wouldn't give teams a lot of time, much incentive to blow up the ship and trade everything away. And just from all the things he brought up, all the articles I read on it, I think it is a good idea because my biggest thing with pushing it back and the NFL in this aspect is that, it would help a lot with injuries because a lot of players you see are out for the season after like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then midway through the season, if you get a catastrophic injury and you're past the trade deadline after week 8, you're stuck. It ruins a lot of seasons, entire seasons, even if it's looking promising. If your quarterback goes down, it ruins everything. That season's almost certainly thrown away. So having that trade deadline pushed back 2 weeks, I think would be good in that aspect. And just my biggest thing with the NFL is everything should be balanced. I don't like seeing bye weeks on like week 5. And then after that, you got to play like 13 weeks in a row. That's another thing I guess I could propose if I was proposing rule changes is find a way to make the bye weeks more even halfway through the season of all these teams, but I think just everything in the NFL should be at a balance like that because it is one of the more, if not the most physical sport in the United States, globally potentially, that this balance, I think, in my opinion, would solve a lot of that, would make it more manageable to deal with these injuries. And, the benefit of just leaving it as it is, the pushback from the league could be, it's worked. Why would you change it? And to harp on that topic of tanking, if teams do start to tank and, these teams that have proposed this rule change are wrong, this could all start to be more like the NBA with a lot of players just requesting trades. You'll see a lot more activity around trade deadline. The NBA is known for having trade deadline be a big event because everybody does it so much. This could kind of push the NFL towards that a little bit. And quite honestly, it just reminds me of like a Madden franchise when you're trading everybody on the team because you want your team to be as good as possible so quick. You definitely don't want that in the NFL because it'll bring up a lot more issues. So that's the one thing of it. But, I think a good middle ground could be week 9, just pushing it back a week instead of week 10. I think the NFL would be more open to it. And you also have to see the NFLPA side of it, if they have any pushback or if they see maybe not every player agrees with it. Maybe the majority don't. They'll have to see. They'll have to get involved if this does become more serious. But I thought that was interesting. Of all the trades, that seems to be the most concrete thing that could be happening, could become a real issue, other than all the trade rumors. So I wanted to touch on that and how it could impact the NFL. But that'll wrap it up for that segment. I will send it to another quick break. But again, don't go anywhere because coming up, I'll let you know what Caleb Williams said today at the Combine, as well as letting you know any other free agency moves that could be coming. Some teams very active, some teams not. And a quarterback who has gotten a lot more answers solved over the last few days than he did just a few days ago. All that coming up on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network.